Well, if my SEAL career had ended with a mistake, I would have figured out what my next mission was going to be. That's what I would have done. I mean, I would have said, okay, I like that job. I failed at it. What can I learn from that? And what can I do next differently to make sure I don't make that mistake again? Mm-hmm. I'm going to learn from the past, but I'm not going to dwell on it. Mm. There's no point in dwelling on it. The only point in dwelling on it is just to learn from it. So that's what I would do here. And then I would take what I learned from my experiences of where I failed, and I would also take the positive things that I learned, because even that failure is a positive. Even that failure is a positive, because you realize the value of the opportunity that you had, and you blew it, and you're like, okay, I'm never going to let that happen again. Lesson learned. I'm actually stoked I get to learn that lesson, because there's going to be more opportunities that come up in life, and you got to make sure that you don't disregard those opportunities when they come up. And so I would have taken those lessons learned, take that failure and turn it into something positive, and made good things happen when I figured out what my new mission and new career was going to be. Pretty straightforward. Mm. You can do so much good. And that's going back to the story that I told about Jeff in the beginning of this podcast. Some of the wording that I struggled with in the kid story, and again, it's the Warrior Kid podcast. One of the things that I struggled with in telling the story was I ended up saying Jeff had gone too far and he couldn't correct himself. Yeah. He had gone too far and he couldn't come back. And that's a real hard thing to tell a person, and it's a real hard thing to tell a kid. And the reason why I left it that way, the reason why I kept it like, listen, you can make mistakes that you can't come back from, especially as a kid. You can make mistakes that you can't come back from. They're pretty rare, right? Mm-hmm. There's not too many mistakes that are so grievous that you can't recover from them. Mm-hmm. Like this guy. Hey, man, he made a mistake. Failed a drug test, given a general discharge. That sucks. Mm-hmm. Guess what? He can do all kinds of good in the world. He can make up for that tenfold. He can start a business, make money, he can create a family, he can raise great kids, and there's so many things that he can make sure his kids understand that and know that and learn from it. And he can make sure some other neighborhood kids and high school kids and grade school kids, he can make such an impact on the world by learning from that mistake. So it's a harsh thing to say, like, hey, there's some things you can't. Now, what this guy can't recover from, and this is the fact that you have to face, and this is why I told it this way in the kid story. He didn't understand. When he made that mistake, he didn't understand that there's some mistakes you cannot recover from. He can't be a pilot now. It's not going to happen. Zero chance of him being a military pilot. That's the way it works. So if I would have had the opportunity to tell him when he was 13 years old, hey, listen, bro, I get it. You're going to step outside the box sometimes, but there's some mistakes that you can make that you'll never be able to recover from. So think about what you're doing before you do them. You need to think about what you're doing before you do them. And if I would have had the opportunity to tell him that when he was 13 years old, he might have had a better decision-making process when he got older. That's why I left it that way for those kids, so that they recognize that there are some things that you do as a person, as a kid, that you cannot recover from. You cannot recover from them. Now, that being said, when you take this and you put it in perspective as an adult, and as an adult, you have a much broader world to be a part of. Mm-hmm. And just because he's not going to be a pilot, a military pilot, by the way, just because he's not going to be a military pilot, there's all kinds of other opportunities out there. And you can explain that to an adult, but it's hard to explain that to a kid. Mm-hmm. So what other opportunities? I mean, even if, especially like, oh, you want to be a pilot? Cool, you can become a civilian pilot. And you can fly. You can make things happen that way. But what we're not going to do, and what I would not do, is dwell on the past and dwell on what the big missed opportunity is. Because guess what? That's a missed opportunity that there's all kinds of people in the world would love for that to be their biggest mistake that they've made. That's it. They would love. There's someone sitting in prison right now. That's like, man, I wish all I did was fail a drug test and I could have learned my lesson. Instead, I'm sitting here in prison. Or I got injured really bad because I did something that I shouldn't have done, or I made a bad decision, or I got someone that I care about hurt or injured because I took them in a car when I was drunk. Like, those are the kind of mistake. This mistake, sure, it's a bummer. Guess what? There are infinitely worse mistakes that he could have made. Infinitely worse. So, you're all right, man. You're okay. Learn from it. Don't dwell on it. Move on and go do something really positive in the world.